Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.
4.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional architectural and engineering design services agreement between the city and Coke Hazard for the Sioux Falls Administrative Office Building, along with other documents, amendments, change orders, or other instruments as may be deemed necessary and appropriate, consistent with the terms of the agreement.
Sue, welcome.
Good evening. Sue Kwan-Bucketten, Director of Central Services. I'm here tonight with Karen Leonard from the City Attorney's Office and also Tracy Turback from the Finance Office to do a short presentation about the A&E contract. As you will recall, we went through a formal RFP process earlier this summer. We received 10 proposals, and Coke Hazard rose to the top with their expertise, personnel, and the competitive fee. The architect we'll be working with is Keith Thompson, who is here tonight, if you have any questions for him. Coke Hazard is the best fit for this project. They have significant relevant office expertise. Like I said, their proposal included a competitive fee, and their lead architect has significant percentage of time to dedicate to this very important project for the city of Sioux Falls. Just for point of clarification, the project referred to in the contract refers to the construction of a new city administrative office building located north of the city-owned 8th and Dakota ramp between 8th and 6th Streets. The project also will include a parking lot, landscaping, and potentially a skywalk from the building to the city ramp. We do have a good general idea of the departments that we believe will be a good fit for the building, and we will work with Coke Hazard to flesh out those program ideas. These exhibits will be prepared post-contract execution with the city's architect and construction manager, mutually agreeing upon the program, budget, and schedule. We do plan to build an energy-efficient building designed to meet basic LEED certification requirements. And at this time, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Karen Leonard, our Chief Assistant Attorney, who will walk us through the contract phases.
Thank you, Sue. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, my name is Karen Leonard. I'm a Deputy City Attorney and I've been working on this contract. I have been asked to go through the architect services with you. There are 2 phases to this contract. The first phase will deal with 2 subparts to it, and we are using a phased approach. The contract does expressly state that we can terminate the contract if the council chooses not to proceed. Under the subparts of phase 1 is programming and schematic design. The program is going to be, it's defined as the owner's conceptual ideas, and they will be further developed and become the formal program of the project. Once the program is established, we will work with that information from the program upon which the schematic design documents will be prepared. The schematic design is the preliminary design illustrating the scale and relationship of the project components, and the schematic design then replaces the program. In phase 2, we have 4 subparts, and so we take the schematic design, and each one of these builds off of each other. We take the criteria and parameters from the schematic design to create the design development documents, and this will be a more detailed plan consisting of drawings, plans, sections, elevations, typical construction detail, layouts of building systems as to architectural, structural, mechanical, and electrical systems. And once approved by all the parties, the design development documents will replace the schematic design. At the conclusion of the design development, the parties will meet to understand the cost of the work will be established through the GMP package. And based on the design development documents and the creation of the cost of the work, the GMP package will establish the construction documents by setting forth the parameters of the construction documents. The construction documents must conform to the GMP, and the construction documents describe the work necessary to bid and construct the project. The next step will be that the construction documents will be released for bidding, and then the last phase is the construction itself, and that will commence with the owner issuing a notice to proceed with the work to the construction manager. There are two phases, and under phase 1, for the two subparts, the payment to the architect fee will be a lump sum payment for phase 1 of $85,000. Under phase 2, the 4 subparts will be divided up, their compensation will be divided up, but they will get paid based on a percentage of the guaranteed maximum price. And here it was agreed to at 4.85% of the guaranteed maximum price. And to refresh your memory on what the guaranteed maximum price is, that will be determined upon completion of the design development in phase 2, and it is established by joint agreement among the city, the architect, and the construction manager. The guaranteed maximum price will include the total cost of the work to construct the project, and it will also include the construction manager's fee. The GMP is only one element of what will make up the project budget. The other elements of the project budget may include the architect fees and expenses, soil exploration fees, legal fees, furniture, fixture, and equipment purchases, the owner's representative fees, and other non-construction costs. And last, I want to address that the architect, in addition to their fees, will also be paid reimbursable expenses. Those will include transportation and authorized travel, telecommunication services, printing of construction documents, postage, handling and delivery, renderings, taxes on the basic services. I will now turn it over to Tracy Turbeck, who will describe the next steps.
Thank you, Karen. Tracy, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Karen. The resolution before you tonight, of course, involves only the agreement with the architect. But as we've talked about before, there are a number of steps in this process. The architect engagement is really the first of a number of gates we go through. And as Karen described, the first phase of that contract with the architect will get us to the completion of the schematic design when we can know what the project will look like and have a very reliable estimate of what it will cost. We've talked about some of the other milestones that will be coming up. When we were last before you with a project update in mid-September, we talked about some of these milestones, but they are very important, and I think it bears repeating just so that we can be clear about what's to come. We expect very likely in November to bring before the council a construction manager at risk contract. That RFP process and selection process has been completed. Councilor Kiley has been involved in that process. That was just interviews were conducted last week, and so we're now in the process of negotiating a contract to bring before you for the construction manager at risk. And as I say, that's likely to come before the council in November. And that contract will be structured very similar to the architect contract, so that we will have the schematic design phase of the work completed by the architect and by the construction manager. First quarter of 2016 is what we're expecting. And then there'll be another key gate to make a determination as to whether or not we proceed with the project to actually engage to have the building constructed. Also coming up in the near future will be contracts with a financial advisory services firm as well as a bond counsel. Those are two key players in our financing team. We want to have those folks under contract and ready to go so that we can proceed again at the first quarter of next year should the council decide to move forward with the project. As I mentioned, the schematic design phase of this office building project we are expecting to be completed in first quarter of 2016. So once we have the architect on board, presumably after tonight, should you approve that, in November we'll get the construction manager on board, and they will, along with the city, proceed to complete that schematic design phase by the first quarter of next year. And again, that really, in layman's terms, tells us what will the project look like and what will it cost. And those are two very key key pieces of information that you folks need to decide whether or not we will move forward with the project. And once we reach that point, if there's a favorable determination to continue moving forward with the project, then we will also in the first quarter of 2016 be back to seek council authorization to approve proceeding with the project and to issue bonds. One last comment I'll make, just as a side note, relative to the financial advisory and bond counsel services. As you folks know, we're also on somewhat of a parallel track with a parking ramp project that we're intending to finance with bonds. And so those contracts will contemplate doing either one of those, either that project or this one, or potentially both. So we hope to gain some efficiencies if these projects continue to run in terms of the timing on parallel tracks. We will have both those team members for both projects in place. With that, I know Sue and Karen and I will stand by for any questions you have. As Sue mentioned, Keith is here from Coke Hazard, and Aaron Bovenkamp, project manager, is here as well. So,
Thank you all. We appreciate that. Is there anybody in the audience who wants to speak to this item? Welcome.
My name's Bruce Danielson. I'm up here again tonight. And I just wanted to show you what 105 pages of a contract looks like. I emailed all of this to you the other day as soon as I got a hold of it, just to see what kind of comments I would get back, and also just make sure you guys had a chance to read the whole 105 pages. A few of us actually did. And with these 105 pages, it includes a contract we're discussing. And I'll ask all of you, have you actually read it? You've had a lot to read and study this weekend. We have a meeting that was shoved up a day, and so you had that much less time to work on anything. And so, did any of the contract make sense to you if you did have a chance to read it? I did send in the email 2 clauses that bothered me a lot. But looking at the pages near the end of the admin building contract is useful to us. I just handed out 13 questions because it shows us in the admin building contract that it's the dirty or working copy. And it helped us understand the differences between the event center contract and this one. Now, that was the Mortensen contract. This is Coke Hazards. There's some differences going on here, but essentially it's the same contract, only more restrictive. It shows, among other things, how they inserted sections 12.1.1 and 12.1.2. These sections say it will be secret and the architect cannot talk about it. We are barred from copying this contract or printing it per this red line advisory. I mean, that's actually in here. And so, if you're going to arrest me, arrest me. But we printed it out. We're going to start asking more of these questions. Our city attorney's good at this tactic if we expose stuff that seems to be hidden. Other offensive transparency items were also added by the city. Look at these 2 contracts. The most offensive non-transparency items were added to this document by the city. They don't want you guys to know anything. They don't want us to know anything. They don't want the people at Sioux Falls to know anything. And we want to know what's so top secret about a building. So it's not even standard stuff in the contract template. They just added this stuff themselves. Obvious proof they are actively endeavoring to make this close to all oversight. Apparently the clauses carried over from the event center contract were not tight enough to hide information, so the city had to add more restrictions. The clauses 12.1.1 and 12.1.2 and more give the city exclusive authority to talk about the project. It gags the construction manager and the architect and other admin building parties as in the event center contract. This is similar to the event center contract in sections 11.5.15 and 11.5.16, but worse. It also lets the city mark anything they wish confidential, and as such, no one can disclose it. Where are the hard and fast rules about what is confidential? Oh, that's right, there aren't any. It seems to me tonight is the night the council either affirmatively demands that the public and the council be allowed to know information about the project, or they hand over the authority to the city and affirmatively give up their and the public's right to know. It's up to you people tonight to defer this, allow yourselves to read the 105-page contract, understand what's in it, see if you can get any of those 13 questions answered, and see if we can actually get to the point of knowing even simple things like change orders. And what happens to the money? It's up there on the list for you. What happens to the money from the change orders? And does that, when a change order gets put in, and this is something that if you've been involved in building projects, I've done general work, I've done subcontracting work, and change orders come along. And that money, usually there's a balancing in the end to say, did the city come out or did the contract come out with the change orders? And who got the benefit of the change orders? And that's all we're asking in the audits that I asked for the other day when I was here. And I'm going to keep asking as each one of these come up. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dennison. Appreciate that. Council? Yes, Councilor Kiley.
First of all, could Karen or Aaron or Sue respond to some of Mr. Danielson's concerns here, please?
Thank you, Karen Leonard, Deputy City Attorney. And I appreciate the comments made by Mr. Danielson. First, he referenced that this contract is similar to Mortenson's contract. Just as a point of clarification, this is an architect contract. The Mortenson contract was a construction manager at risk contract. So there are two different contracts, two different section numbers. So I don't want that to be a confusion there. Secondly, in terms of the confidential nature, sections 12.1.1 and 12.1.2, these contracts are based on template language from the American Institute of Architects, and they are routinely revised. And because we are working with an architect and a public body, we made it very clear in our documents that we are bound by state open record laws, and that there are some exemptions in the state open record laws, such as proprietary information or copyrighted material, as an architect would have copyrighted rights to their drawings and whatnot, that they can mark confidential, and those would be exempt from being passed on to the public under the open records law. Now, we put the onus in the contract on the architect to let us know what they deem to be confidential, and then we will look at it and compare it to state law and make sure it fits, and both parties have to agree to it, and then that would be marked. So that if there was an open record request, we would go ahead and release that portion of the contract that is not deemed confidential. So that is very standard. Oftentimes these AIA templates are used in the private business and sector, and they wouldn't have to deal with what we do as a public body. So that is the reason for that. Are there any other particular questions that you would like me to address?
No, I think that does a fair job, unless any of the other counselors would have questions.
Councilor Erickson?
Yeah.
Turn on my microphone. Just to follow up to that.
Sure.
Was this, since they are different contracts, is this the way it's written similar to what was done in the event center for the architect then?
Yes, it was written in the event center and also the aquatic center contracts. So where we've used this form of methodology with a construction manager at risk and an architect also working on these contracts, this language is in those.
It's similar.
falls
We're
in
doing
line.
the same thing that has been done with those other
Yes.
buildings. Thank you
Yes.
for
Councilor
answering that.
Erickson, thanks for asking that. Councilor Staggers?
Some time ago, I remember that a number was presented to the city council for, rough estimate of how much this is going to cost city taxpayers, this administrative building. And, I can't remember the number right now. Can you give us a number on how much is this going to be?
I'm going to let Tracy Turbeck answer that for you, Counselor. Thank you.
Tracy Turback with the Finance Office. There has not been a cost estimate provided for this particular project, and that really is the point of the schematic design process, is to develop the project and the plan for the project to the point where we can determine a reasonable, reliable cost estimate. So come first quarter of next year, should this contract and eventually the construction manager contract be approved, we will be able to answer that question for you. Not only what will it cost, but give you a much better picture of what the project will look like.
Yeah, I guess it's important for the city council to know as soon as possible, you know, what the possible, how much we're going to be paying for this. And I don't know if anybody else on the city council remembers a number. I remember this number, $4 million or something. No, everybody's shaking their head no. Oh, okay.
There was
Nobody's.
no number.
But it seems like we should have a number as soon as possible so we can, know if we're making a good decision here.
But I certainly agree. It's important to have a number, but it's important to have a reliable number, and that's what our intention is to have the architect and the construction manager work with us over the next several months to determine what that cost estimate is. And the only way to do that is to engage these professionals that can really tell us what it will take to construct the building that we need.
Awesome.
We
Well,
have to spend a little money, I guess, to answer those questions is kind of the bottom line, Counselor.
so January's been mentioned, early next year's been mentioned as when we're going to get some more information. Is that fair to say? Then we can look forward to getting some numbers around January of 2016?
Sometime during that first quarter of 2016.
Yay.
Before we would come back to you and ask you to appropriate dollars or authorize bonds to be sold for the project, I think it's only fair to you and to the public to know and have a really good, reliable cost estimate as to what the project will cost and what it will take in terms of a bond issue to pay for that. So before we move beyond the schematic design phase, which will give us that estimate, we'll be back before you with that answer.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Jameson.
Tracy, if you could stay first, I want to make sure I'm reading it right. Is it, could you just, the fee that the city would be paying for the architectural design work, is that $85,000?
The phase one, to get us to the end of this schematic design process will cost $85,000. That's right.
And then just next sequence would be the contract manager at risk, and that would be another fee that would
Right.
be, and
Right, and as I mentioned, that contract will be structured in a similar fashion where we've got a fee to get us to the end of schematic design, so that we'll have the preliminary cost for the architect to complete the schematic design, an initial cost for the construction manager to complete the schematic design, and then we're at a point where we have that reliable cost estimate without a commitment to move forward until you folks make that decision.
gotcha, I think
That
I
makes
got it.
sense.
Thanks.
Councilor Karski.
Thank you. And Councilor Jameson, that was kind of my question. We begin with an $85,000 fee. It's pretty much non-refundable. That's what we're paying the architect to draw up the design of the building.
The preliminary design, right?
And then it's, he gets 4.8% of the costs for being the architect on the project. If we go into phase two, plus we pay all expenses. From that last slide that I saw, I mean, we're paying for postage and travel and whatever. Is that a standard way to do an architectural contract? We don't just say we'll pay you X and.
I think it's very standard, and certainly the others on the team can address this as well, but I think it's customary for architects to be paid a percentage of the cost of the project. I don't think that's anything out of the ordinary whatsoever. I also think it's very typical to have a contract where their out-of-pocket expenses are also reimbursed. And I believe Karen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's just a straight pass-through. There is no markup. Sometimes you might see that in contracts where reimbursables have a markup, but I don't believe that's the case here.
Okay, I went into the wrong business.
Well, I don't know. I got my insurance bill last week. I think you maybe are.
Tracy Trebek, thank you. All right, Counselor. Counselor Erpenbach.
It's hard. I need to talk to Karen just a little bit. I need to break down this really scary language that we're looking at, the 150 pages and all the top secret and the gag order and all of that. I'm really concerned that this group of highly intelligent people and the city administration are quite honestly, I'm just tired of being dragged through the mud. I'm tired of being told how stupid we are and that we can't keep track of contracts and that our people aren't doing a good job. I'm really, really tired of it. I want you to talk again, and you said it earlier, I want you to talk very clearly about state open meeting laws and what those requirements are for contracts of this nature. That tell me exactly what you're going to do to protect us as our employee, and when I say us, I mean the citizens of Sioux Falls. What are you going to do to make sure that this is done in a legal and open way that follows state open meeting laws?
Well, thank you, Councilor Erpenbach. Our number one duty as a city employee or an elected official is to protect the taxpayer dollar. And so through contract negotiation, I do believe that we've done that. I did write down some comparison numbers so that you could understand that, yes, there is a lump sum fee being paid, Councilor Karski, and also a percentage of the guaranteed maximum price of 4.85% for their fee. But looking back, the architect was compensated in the event center. They received 6.2% of the GMP, and also in the aquatic center fee, it was 6.75. I think that we have really protected the taxpayer dollar here for the size of this project. Secondly, transparency is very important to us, and that's why we recognized it in the contract that we are subject to the open record laws, and that we have to follow, and the contract has to follow those laws. Now, having said that, state law also has, I think, over 23, 25 exceptions to the open record laws that allow for us to keep certain things confidential, such as settlement matters, such as, and for the architect in particular, they have copyright protections that they can keep secret from other architects, and we have to protect them as well because we want to be good business partners for them. We also have a responsibility not to turn over proprietary information, because that is why they come to do business with a public entity, is that they have to have some assurance that we are going to protect that information. And so we are following the guidelines of state law, and that's the way we drafted the contract. What we have done in terms of, I don't consider it a gag order for us to use a collaborative effort to address media concerns. I think that shows good leadership. I think that shows that we have one voice and that we are all on the same page in a team, and we know what we're saying. And so that's what we did with the approach of directing it to the city and handling that. And so we have gone through this countless hours, Counselor. I cannot tell you how many hours we have put in, weekend time. This team has just poured over this contract. We had a consultant from Tegra pour over the contract to make sure that it is fully vetted, and I feel very comfortable in making the recommendation that it has been staff looked at and vetted over and discussed.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. Mr. Mayor, is there a motion on the table?
There's not.
I would move to approve, please.
Second, Rolfe.
Been a motion to approve this item and has been seconded. Councilor Kiley.
Well, thank you. I'd like to just address Councilor Karski's concerns about fee for services and reimbursement for actual expenses. I mean, we operate a contract with another larger entity, and I would love it if they would allow me to lump all of my estimated expenses into one single fee, because no doubt I'm going to make sure that we're going to be well compensated for the contract, and in many cases, it's probably going to be overcompensation, because I'm going to make sure that I'm adequately covered for all of my estimated expenses up front, whether I've incurred them or not. So I think this has probably been proven time and again that this is the appropriate way to do that without paying out unnecessary funds. And we have gone through a number of informationals now on this. I think we're up to 3 informationals that we've had presented. We've had a number of emails that have been sent out, and some just here recently in the last few weeks. We've received at least 2 with the timeline, and so on. Councilors Anderson and Rolfing and myself have served on a Space Needs Committee along with others. We've gone through. I was part of the review of proposals for architect, and I do believe Coke Hazard is the obvious choice here from the 10 proposals that we had received. Keith and his team are going to do an excellent job. We've actually have just completed the construction manager at risk review of proposals. So at some point here in the future, a CMR contract will be presented to this council. And then at that point, Councilor Staggers, we will be able to come up with the scale and scope of the building, because now we've got the actual experts. And you have asked the question, you know, what is the dollar amount? And it's probably tempting to throw one out. I mean, I'm not a contractor, I'm not an architect. I have slept at a Holiday Inn, so I could give you a guess, but it would be just simply that. And I think if we want to have an accurate amount, this is the process that you go through. So we're working slowly to that end, and this is just one step in that process of determining the overall cost. So I thank Aaron and Sue, Councilor, and Karen as well for the hours they've put in, as well as Councilors Anderson and Rolfing on this particular project. And I would urge your approval on this evening.
Councilor Anderson Jr., did you have a comment, sir?
No.
Okay, thank you. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Karski,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Staggers,
No.
Anderson,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go. Come on, let's go. Come on.